Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are plunging into something that, well, it touches all of us, often frustratingly so, trying to improve our health. Not just generic wellness advice, but, the quest for self-improvement that actually cuts through the noise and works for you.
Yeah, it's a massive topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we're diving into a really insightful piece of writing today that challenges some, fundamental assumptions.
Okay.
It gets right to the heart of why, despite all the info and effort out there, so many people still struggle, to make lasting health changes.
Our guide for this is Dr. Lutz Kraushar. He's a doctor of public health, got an MSc in exercise and nutrition too.
Right.
And these sharp insights, they come from his Substack newsletter, which is perfectly named Double Check Doc.
Love that name. And our mission for this deep dive is really to unpack his central argument.
Yeah.
We want to understand the big picture problems, the things standing in the way of translating health science into actual personal health improvements.
And crucially,
walk you through a practical, pretty powerful tool he proposes for navigating this whole challenge yourself.
Okay, let's jump right in then. He starts at the point that's pretty sobering. The lifespan gap. We're living longer, which sounds great, right?
Yeah.
But on average, certainly in places like the U.S., we end up spending the final decade, maybe 11 years or more.
Yeah, dealing with avoidable diseases and disabilities,
Yeah.
stuff we maybe didn't need to get.
Exactly. That's the stark reality.
So the real purpose of health self-improvement, Dr. Kraushar argues, shouldn't just be, tacking a few more years onto the calendar.
It's more than that.
It's about aggressively shrinking that period of suffering, that decade plus of sickness at the end. It's about living healthier for longer.
Right. Quality, not just quantity. And this leads him to what he calls the self-improvement paradox.
Ah, yes, the paradox.
He looks at the stats. Something like 90% of us are likely to face significant health issues after age 60. 90%.
That's huge.
Yet somehow, we collectively seem to believe we're going to be in that lucky 10%.
It's that classic optimism bias, isn't it?
Yeah.
It won't happen to me. We underestimate our own risk compared to, the average person.
Totally.
And he sees this not just as a psychological quirk, but almost as a form of self-sabotage.
How so?
Because it stops us. It stops us from preventing conditions that the data shows 80% of us could actually avoid or at least significantly delay if we took the right actions.
And he's very clear. This isn't about guilt-tripping anyone or, selling some expensive retreat or quick fix.
No.
His goal is to provide a realistic framework, a practical approach to help you compress that time spent sick.
Which feels incredibly timely, especially when you look at the sheer scale of the self-improvement industry.
Oh, tell me about it.
Americans are spending, $16.5 billion every year on programs, books, supplements, gadgets.
Wow.
And it's projected to hit nearly $28 billion in just a few years. You'd think with all that spending, we'd be seeing major improvements in well-being, wouldn't you?
You would absolutely expect that. But here's where it gets, really interesting and honestly quite frustrating based on the data he pulls together.
Go on.
Despite all that money, all that effort, our actual mental and physical health metrics, they're deteriorating.
It's wild, isn't it? He points to trends like rising rates of depression and anxiety, more loneliness, more social isolation.
Stress, sleep problem.
Exactly. Across the board, but really hitting middle-aged adults hard. If all this self-improvement spending was working, shouldn't we be seeing the exact opposite?
It's a massive disconnect. And it's not just the pop health world either. Even traditional medicine, struggles with getting people to make lasting behavior changes.
Right.
He mentions the American Heart Association's Life's Essential 8. These key metrics for heart health, like diet, activity, blood pressure, cholesterol.
The basics, really.
The absolute basics. And less than 1 in 100 adults in the U.S. scores ideal across those 8 factors. 1%.
And get this, that number hasn't really budged in 2 decades.
2 decades.
Think about that. All the health initiatives, the warnings, the advice, and the percentage of people meeting basic heart health goals. Flatlined.
You see it visually, too. Look at the obesity numbers just steadily climbing. Now it's like 1 in 2 U.S. adults.
It's a very visible sign that our collective habits just aren't moving in the right direction, despite all the talk.
So circling back to that lifespan gap.
Yeah, in the U.S., the average is 12.4 years. It's about 11 for men, 14 for women.
14 years for women. Wow.
And you compare that to places like Japan or Singapore, their gaps are much, much smaller.
It shows it's possible to do better, Even the AHA, the American Heart Association, set a really modest goal back in 2020.
What was that?
Just increase healthy life expectancy by 2 years by 2030. Move the average from 66 to 68.
2 years. I mean, it's achievable, but it really highlights how slow the progress feels.
It does. It kind of makes you think of that saying, and it often linked to Einstein.
Ah, the definition of insanity one.
Exactly. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Mm-hmm. If we keep using the same sort of broken strategies for health behavior change and self-improvement,
Yeah.
we just can't realistically expect that health span gap to magically shrink. We need a different approach.
So if the usual ways aren't cutting it, Dr. Kraushar argues it's because they suffer from some pretty fundamental flaws. He points out 3 key problems.
All right, what's the first one?
Flaw number 1 is about why we find it so hard to prioritize future health. He nails it with the phrase, health is when you don't feel it.
Ooh, that's good. Because it's true, right? Health is often the absence of feeling bad.
Exactly. It's incredibly difficult to prioritize something that gives you 0 immediate sensory feedback.
Yeah, the immediate pleasure from, say, a burger or binge watching a show. You feel that now.
Right now.
But the long-term reward of future health from, I don't know, eating an apple or going to the gym, it's delayed, it feels uncertain.
And you don't feel healthier in that specific moment you choose the apple.
No. Our brains are just wired for that immediate gratification. And that optimism bias we talked about, it just reinforces it. The negative consequences of bad choices feel distant, like maybe they won't even happen to me. So the immediate pleasure usually wins.
Okay, so that's a big hurdle. But let's say you manage to push past that immediate urge and you decide to try something healthy. How do you know it's actually the right thing for you specifically? You might look to science, right? To the studies.
And that brings us neatly to the second major flaw he identifies, the replication fallacy.
Okay.
Or this idea that average study results don't apply to you. We look at randomized controlled trials, RCTs, as the gold standard.
They are, aren't they?
Well, yes, for isolating an effect under specific conditions. They're designed to be highly controlled environments. They use very specific types of participants.
And the problem is?
The problem is, unless you happen to live in a lab and fit that exact profile, you probably don't match the people in that study perfectly. Or maybe even closely.
Right. Real life is messy.
Exactly. This is why researchers talk about the difference between efficacy and effectiveness. An RCT shows if something can work, that's efficacy, under ideal lab conditions.
Okay.
But real-world data, RWD, shows if it does work, that's effectiveness, out here in the messy, unpredictable real world where we all live.
So even if a study shows a fantastic result on average,
it might not actually work that way for you in your life. And crucially, that average participant from the study, they don't actually exist.
what do you mean?
Within any study group, you get this huge range of individual responses. Some people might see a massive benefit, maybe even more than the average.
Okay.
Many might see little to no effect at all. They're just kind of, And a small but sometimes significant group could even have negative outcomes.
Wow.
The average result completely masks all that individual variability. You just don't know which group you'll fall into by looking at that average number.
Okay, so if average study results aren't a reliable guide for me personally, and I can't just rely on how I feel right now, I'm kind of flying blind, aren't I?
That is exactly the third flaw he points out. Not flying blind, the critical need for personal health data.
Makes sense.
Without collecting some kind of data on yourself, you are just guessing. You're, as he puts it, wand waving, just hoping that whatever trendy strategy you're trying actually works for your unique biology.
And if you don't see any tangible proof, any evidence that your efforts are actually paying off, how on earth are you supposed to stay motivated?
It's incredibly hard. Sticking with something difficult when you have absolutely no feedback loop, almost impossible long term.
Yeah.
He uses a great analogy. Think of your body as a really critical customer.
Okay, like a demanding client.
Exactly. It needs hard evidence. It needs proof that whatever recommendation you're following, whatever change you're making, is actually delivering the goods for it.
And this critical customer body, it has questions.
It has 3 key questions it asks about any self-improvement strategy you try. This is his core tool.
Okay, lay them on me. What are these 3 questions? This toolbox Dr. Kraushar proposes.
Right, so question 1, from your body's perspective is, could it work for me?
Okay, where do I find that answer?
This is where the studies, the general scientific evidence come in. They can give you a starting point, a plausible hypothesis. Is it biologically reasonable?
But remembering flaw, #2.
Exactly. Remembering flaw, #2, the replication fallacy. It's only could, based on an average that might not apply to you.
Got it. So that's just the entry ticket. Where's the real test?
That's question 2. Does it work for me? This is the absolute crucial step.
How do I answer that?
It requires you to actually do the intervention, whatever it is, and measure a tangible change. You need a reliable way to track how your specific body responds. You need personal data.
Okay, makes sense. And the third question?
Question 3 is it worth it?
Worth the effort.
Exactly. This gets right to the effort-effect trade-off. Does the lifestyle change or the supplement or whatever it is deliver a meaningful health return for the effort you're putting in?
Because ultimately the goal is narrowing that lifespan gap, right?
Precisely. Is the juice worth the squeeze, literally and figuratively? Is the outcome significant enough for the hassle involved?
That framework, could it work? Does it work for me? Is it worth it? That makes so much sense. Can we see it in action? He used an example, right? Something about blackcurrant juice.
He did. A great example. It was a recent study looking at an anthocyanin-rich blackcurrant beverage.
Okay.
And the authors claimed it mitigated the effects of a high-fat meal on vascular function and markers of CVD risk. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah, sounds promising. What did they actually measure to back that up?
They used something called slow-mediated dilation, or FMD.
FMD.
Yeah, the non-invasive ultrasound measurement. It looks at how well your arteries dilate or widen in response to blood flow changes. It's seen as the good indicator of endothelial function, basically, the health of the inner lining of your blood vessels.
So higher FMD is better.
Higher FMD generally suggests healthier, more flexible arteries.
Okay, so the study says blackcurrant juice helps FMD after a fatty meal. Seems straightforward enough, but Dr. Kraushar, being the double-check doc, he dug a bit deeper, didn't he?
He certainly did. And he found some potential, let's call them red flags, that made him want to look really closely at the actual data, not just the headline claim.
Like what?
Well, first off, the study only had 22 participants. That's quite small. And the effect size they claimed seems, well, surprisingly large for such a small group. That always raises an eyebrow.
Okay, small sample, big effect claim. Any other flags?
Yeah, there was the funding source, GlaxoSmithKline, GSK. And one of the authors was employed by both GSK and Haleon, which is GSK's consumer health division, the part that owns supplement brands.
Okay, so a potential conflict of interest, or at least the appearance of one.
Right. It doesn't automatically invalidate the study, but it definitely means you should scrutinize the data even more carefully.
Mm-hmm.
He also noted that while the authors said the data was public, key info needed for a full replication, like the sex of participants or the BMI data used in analysis, was actually missing.
Incomplete data. And I think you mentioned the timing was odd, too.
Yeah, that was interesting. The study was actually completed way back in 2015, like 10 years ago, but it was only published very recently.
Why the delay?
He speculates, and it's just speculation, that it could potentially be linked to preparing for a new blackcurrant supplement release down the line. Again, not proof of bias, but it's another piece of context that makes you go, let's look very closely at this data.
So instead of just taking the study's average result at face value, especially with those flags,
right,
he shows us how you can break free from that average thinking by looking at the data through the lens of the N of 1 method.
Exactly. The N of 1 concept is basically turning yourself into a one-person experiment. You repeatedly measure a chosen biomarker, something relevant during periods when you're doing the intervention, like drinking the special juice, and periods when you're not, like drinking a placebo.
And in this specific blackcurrant study, the researchers actually had the data to do this kind of analysis, right?
They did. They measured FMD 5 different times after participants had the meal and the drink, both in the real juice phase and the placebo phase. So they had 5 data points per person, per condition. That's a decent start for an N of 1 view.
So what happened when he stopped looking at the average of all 22 people and looked at individuals?
The variability was just astonishing. He highlights 4 specific examples that really tell the story. Subject #1. They did show better FMD values, on average, after the blackcurrant juice compared to the placebo.
Okay, so for that one person, it seemed to work as advertised?
Yep. But then you look at subject #2. For them, literally no significant difference between the juice and the placebo. 0 measurable effect on their FMD.
Wow. So a non-responder? What about subject #3? That one was surprising.
Yes. Subject #3 was the real outlier. For this person, their vascular function, measured by FMD, was actually significantly worse after drinking the loaded blackcurrant juice compared to the placebo.
Worse? They actually got worse from the thing that was supposed to help?
That's what their individual data showed. It completely contradicts the study's overall average finding and it highlights just how dangerous relying on averages can be.
Unbelievable. What about the fourth example?
Subject hashtag 4 was also interesting. No significant average difference over the whole measurement period, but their FMD showed a significantly rising trend after the juice, even though their baseline was already quite high. So, a different pattern again.
So when you look at all 22, what was the final count? How many actually benefited on average?
His analysis showed that only 7 out of the 22 participants, less than a third, actually showed a statistically significant average improvement in FMD between the juice and placebo condition.
Less than a third.
It just powerfully illustrates why you absolutely cannot blindly follow the average result of a study and assume it applies to you. What works for average might do nothing for you, or, like subject hashtag 3, could potentially even be detrimental.
Which brings us right back full circle to that critical second question, does it work for me?
Exactly.
And to answer that, you need personal data. You need to track something.
You do.
Yeah.
And to get that data effectively, you need to choose the right personal biomarkers. He proposes the RAMA criteria for picking what to track.
RAMA. Okay, break that down for me.
Sure, RAMA. It stands for reliable. Does the biomarker actually correlate well with health outcomes or biological aging? Is it scientifically sound, accessible? Is it relatively easy for you to measure consistently, like ideally daily or weekly, without a huge hassle? Modifiable. Can your lifestyle choices, diet, exercise, stress management, supplements, actually impact this biomarker detectably? If it never changes, it's not useful for feedback.
And the final A.
Affordable. Does tracking it require breaking the bank? Can you access the necessary tools or tests without excessive cost or complexity?
Okay, reliable, accessible, modifiable, affordable. RAMA. What are some examples of biomarkers that actually fit those criteria for regular people?
Well, he lists things like pulse wave velocity, PWV.
PWV?
Yeah, it relates to arterial stiffness, basically how fast a pressure wave travels through your arteries. It's a good marker for vascular aging, and there are some accessible devices now. He's apparently a big fan of tracking this himself.
Interesting. What else?
Blood pressure is a classic RAMA biomarker. Easy to measure at home, definitely modifiable, affordable devices. Blood sugar, too, if you have a home glucose monitor. Highly modifiable by diet and exercise.
Right. He mentioned a couple of others that were maybe conditionally useful, like resting heart rate.
Yeah, resting heart rate, RHR, and heart rate variability, HRV. They can be useful, potentially reflecting stress levels or cardiovascular fitness or resilience. But they can also be quite noisy, affected by lots of temporary factors like sleep, caffeine, hydration. So interpreting them consistently day to day can be trickier than something like blood pressure or PWV.
Okay. And there's one more. Phase angle.
Ah, yes. Phase angle from bioelectrical impedance analysis, BIA devices like smart scales. It relates to cell membrane health and integrity, potentially muscle quality. Higher is generally better.
Sounds useful.
It could be, but the catch is most consumer BIA devices, frustratingly, don't actually display the phase angle value, even though they measure the raw data needed to calculate it. So accessibility is an issue there for most people.
Gotcha. But it's fascinating that he personally uses PWV daily for himself and his wife to track their vascular aging.
Yeah, he really walks the talk on this N-of-1 approach.
Yeah.
And it taps into these powerful concepts of early vascular aging, EVA, where your arteries are biologically older than your actual age.
Which you want to avoid.
Definitely. Versus the goal, which is supernormal vascular aging, or supernova.
Supernova. Love it.
That's where your vascular age is significantly younger than your chronological age. That's the target.
And I imagine seeing that number, that tangible PWV reading maybe staying low or even improving, showing your biological clock is potentially running slower. That must be incredibly motivating.
Way more motivating than just generic advice or pop psychology affirmations, right? It provides that concrete feedback loop your critical customer body needs to see that the effort is worthwhile.
Yeah, the proof.
Exactly. And you get towards that supernova goal by consistently applying that core tool, asking and honestly answering those 3 questions about any health intervention you're considering.
Let's recap them one more time.
Could it work for me? Based on general science. Does it actually work for me based on my personal data? And finally, is it worth the effort for the results I am seeing?
Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the big message for everyone listening right now trying to navigate this confusing world of health advice?
I think the absolute key takeaway is this. Don't just blindly trust generic advice or the average results from a study, especially if there are potential red flags or conflicts of interest involved.
Be skeptical, double check.
Be skeptical, use a critical lens. But most importantly, start gathering your own personal data. Become your own N of 1 experiment.
Remember the power of those 3 questions. Ask them relentlessly. Could it work? Does it work for me? Is it worth it for me?
And use biomarkers that fit those RAMA criteria. Reliable, accessible, modifiable, affordable, to actually see if a strategy is having the desired effect on your unique body. Stop flying blind.
Okay, so here's a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on as we finish up.
Right.
Think about a specific health claim, or maybe a self-improvement strategy you've heard about recently, or perhaps something you're already trying right now. How could you apply these 3 questions to it? What personal biomarker, even something simple like blood pressure or resting heart rate or just subjective energy levels tracked consistently, could you potentially monitor to see if it's actually working for you?
Yeah, how could you get some real-world data?
Exactly. Start thinking about building your own simple real-world data collection plan. That's how you can truly figure out your unique path toward better health, towards maybe even achieving supernova.
It's a powerful challenge and maybe the key to finally breaking that cycle of ineffective self-improvement. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.